A terrifying story about a witch. At the market, I sold my goods quite quickly. The meat pavilion was especially popular for my pies. A burly butcher nearly 2 meters tall bought my last 3 pies and began to eat them with great appetite. I noticed a terrible scar on his arm just above his wrist, as if it had been burned by acid. "Where did you get that?" I asked. "I refused a gift and was punished for it," the butcher replied. I didn't press him further, but he seemed to be in a good mood. Perhaps the pies were delicious, and he began to tell a story while chewing. "I often travel to villages, buy pigs there, and bring them back here. In December, I had to stop in a village called Ordo Vasilyevka. There wasn't enough time to gather all the information in a day, so I asked some people for a place to stay. I arrived there on the evening of December 4th and decided to go around the village in the morning. "You shouldn't go about your business tomorrow, kid," the hostess warned me. "Why not?" I asked. "It's a bad day," she replied vaguely. I didn't pay much attention to that. Time was precious to me. In the morning, I had good luck. I bought 3 pigs and spent nearly the entire day with them. Satisfied, I was heading home, to my lodging, when I saw an old woman sitting by the road. She was helplessly writhing on the ground. "Help me, son, I twisted my ankle," the old woman whimpered. I helped her up and placed her on her feet. "Take me home, I live nearby," she requested. I walked her to a shabby little house that lacked gas and electricity. "Thank you, son, I want to reward you." The old woman rummaged through an old cupboard and pulled out a gold bracelet. Even by candlelight, it was clear that it was an expensive and antique piece. "Take it, son. Wear it. My son died long ago, and this bracelet has always been passed down through the male line." She deftly put the bracelet on my wrist. Just as I was leaving her yard, I thought, what do I need this last thing from her for? Let her exchange it for bread. I took off the bracelet and dropped it into her old mailbox. That night, the old woman visited me in a dream. She was furious, shouting and cursing. "You turned your nose up at my gift? You won't get away with it now. You took it from me. You'll take my workers," she yelled. In the morning, I woke up with pain in my right arm. The area where the bracelet was had swollen and turned red. I told the landlady all about it. "I told you not to wander around the village. You met old Uliana. She was a witch. She did all sorts of terrible things, spoiled cows, tormented livestock, and cast spells. Foolish city dwellers would come to her. People avoided her. Even her daughter and grandchildren moved to the city." "What do you mean she died?" I blinked, asking the hostess. "She died 5 years ago on December 5th, the woman answered. "She died but couldn't pass her gift to anyone. People used to hear her screams throughout the village, and they would hide like mice in their houses." I barely caught my breath and whispered about the bracelet. "What a disaster. Now you'll be casting spells and summoning your little workers. If you don't give them tasks, you'll die before your time," said the landlady. I ran from the village hoping that all this nonsense, which I didn't believe in, would leave me alone, but it was not to be. That night, some creature was choking me and whining. "What do you want?" I asked. "Give me work. What should I do?" the creature replied. "I want a big talking parrot," I answered. I woke up in a cold sweat. It was 3 in the morning. I drank some water and went back to sleep. In the morning, my wife was shrieking with joy in the kitchen. A genuine red macaw had flown in through the window. I was wide-eyed. Where could such a magnificent tropical bird come from in the dead of winter? My wife immediately ran to the store for food in a cage while I called neighbors and friends asking if anyone had lost a bird. The parrot was unclaimed. That evening I returned to Ordo Vasilyevka. You were right about the witch, but I don't want this gift. What should I do? You need to drive a stake into her grave and sow the earth with burdock. Then you should go to church, she advised. Why didn't you do that before? I inquired. We didn't want to deal with the unclean spirit. Misfortune passed us by, but not you. What, should I dig in the grave? I asked. Take an iron stake about 3 meters long and drive it into her grave. My husband will go with you for support. I didn't quite believe it myself, but my swollen hand, the nightmares, and most importantly, the unclaimed parrot all proved to me that this was no dream or nonsense. In the evening, I went with the landlady's husband to the old cemetery. The grave was overgrown, and I began quietly driving the rebar I had brought into it. Soon I heard a muffled sound, and then the rebar trembled in my hands. Something was happening deep underground. I finished what I started, even though I was scared to death. That night I drank myself into oblivion to sleep a dead sleep. My wife called me on my mobile phone the next morning in tears, saying that the parrot had gone wild. It flew out of the cage and disappeared without a trace. She was upset, but I was immensely happy. I had gotten myself into a ridiculous situation, but had come away with only a light scare. Now I was content. I was dealing with pigs and saving money for a gift for my wife. By the way, thanks for the pies, said the butcher, finishing the last one. What kind of gift? I asked. I want to buy a parrot. In the fog. This is a true story. We lived in a small town in Irkutsk Oblast, and we had our own little business selling health products. We received our goods from the 904th Postal and Baggage Train, which passed through the nearest railway station around 2 or 3 a.m. As usual, my daughter and I would drive to that station, about 30 kilometers from our town, quickly pick up the shipment from the car and head back. One fateful night in the winter of 2005, we set out for our usual trip to pick up the shipment. The temperature outside dropped to about -30 or -35 degrees Celsius. Suddenly, on our familiar road, we encountered patches of fog. We thought it might just be heavy frost causing the mist. As we drove further from our town, however, the fog became thicker and more oppressive. Soon we could not see the edges of the road, the traffic signs, or even the lane markings. Realizing we were in a precarious situation, I stopped the car and turned on the hazard lights. My daughter, feeling brave, opened the door to gauge how far we were from the roadside. But within just a meter or two, I could no longer see her through the fog. The sound of her footsteps faded, and the darkness seemed to engulf her. Panic set in as I honked the horn, desperate for her to find her way back. Finally, I heard her voice, tears in her eyes as she approached. "I can't see anything," she cried, her voice trembling. I stepped out of the car, and that's when I noticed something alarming. The fog wasn't just thick, it was twisting and swirling at ground level, spiraling in a way that seemed almost unnatural. What do we do? I thought, heart racing. The train wouldn't wait for us, and we had to find a way out of this. I tried to drive alongside what I hoped was the shoulder of the road, but after 10 to 15 minutes of agonizing silently through the fog, I realized we had strayed off the highway onto a narrow field path. My heart sank as I contemplated our situation. We had limited fuel, and in an hour the engine would cool down, leaving us freezing to death in this unknown place. In a moment of desperation, I screamed out, "God, help us!" Almost immediately, our fortune began to change when I spotted a shape looming ahead. A PAZ bus parked haphazardly in the fog. Despair turning to urgency, I bolted toward the driver. "Where are we? How did we get here?" The driver appeared confused, peering out into the thickness with eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't know how you ended up here," he exclaimed. "I'm a bit higher up. At least I can see something through this fog. Just stay close behind me." With a sense of relief tempered by the eerie calm of the fog, we followed closely behind his bus, our headlights illuminating just a sliver of the dark, swirling mist around us. After about 20 minutes, the fog began to thin, and I felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude surge through me as we finally reached familiar roads. We stopped, and I rummaged through my pockets and the glove compartment, desperate to gather something to thank our Savior with, a bottle of water maybe. When I managed to find one, I looked up, but the bus was gone. "Did you see which way he went?" I asked my daughter, still feeling the adrenaline rush through my body. She stared off into the void, her expression distant and unfocused. "No, I didn't," she replied, almost as if in a trance. "How could you not? You were looking right at him," I insisted, fear creeping into my voice. I didn't notice," she said, her eyes glassy and unfazed by the chilling turn of events. Somehow we made it to the station just in time, collected our goods, and returned home without incident. The fog had mysteriously vanished, but the unease lingered, gnawing at me long after we got back. The more I analyzed the map and the locales we had traversed, the more confused I became. No matter how many times I traced the route, I couldn't find a single turnoff that could have led us astray. And that bus, where could it have come from? There were nothing but endless snowy fields surrounding us, with nothing but marshland hiding beneath. The realization struck me hard. It was as if the fog itself had conspired against us. Days passed, yet the feeling wouldn't leave. My dreams turned dark and restless. I would wake up drenched in sweat, the echoes of the fog's whispers rattling in my head. Each night I found myself staring at the ceiling, unable to shake the fear that we had narrowly escaped something sinister lurking in the mist. My daughter began to change too. She was more withdrawn, her laughter replaced by a heavy silence. "Are you okay?" I often asked her, worried about the shadows in her eyes. But it was one particular night that would unravel everything. We were sitting on the couch watching TV when I noticed that she kept glancing toward the window. The wind howled outside and the trees swayed menacingly. "Stay close to me," I said as I instinctively pulled her in. My heart raced as the living room grew colder. The crackling of the fire did little to ward off the chill creeping through the room. Suddenly it happened. A thick fog appeared outside, rolling in like a living entity, swallowing everything whole. "What is that?" my daughter whispered, her voice trembling. I could hardly answer as the fog pressed itself against the windows, and I felt an undeniable urge to step outside. A darkness clawed at the edges of my mind, whispering that it would be safe, that it was simply a return to the familiar. "Let's check it out," I said, my heart pounding against my chest. She stared up at me, fear etched on her face. "No, please, I don't want to go out there." But it was too late. The fog had a grip on me. As I opened the door, the icy breeze wrapped around me and I stepped outside into the murky gloom. My daughter was still inside, a silhouette against the dim light of the living room. "Dad!" she cried, "please come back." But her words fell on deaf ears. I couldn't stay away. As I walked, the fog thickened, swirling around me, curling into shapes that felt almost alive. I squinted into the haze, desperately searching for something, anything that would ground me. With each step, I felt more disoriented, as if I were being pulled into a void. Distorted whispers filled the air, a cacophony of voices echoing in my mind. "Help us! Come, stay!" they seemed to chant. "Who are you?" I yelled into the fog, but the only response was a chilling silence. Suddenly I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, a figure gliding through the mist, slipping between the shadows. My heart hammered in my chest. I called out, but the words stuck in my throat as the figure turned, revealing a face shrouded in darkness, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. A scream clawed its way out, but nothing came out. Instead, everything turned to silence again as the figure reached out toward me. Fighting against an invisible force, I stumbled backward, my feet losing purchase on the icy ground. In that moment of panic, sheer instinct took over. I turned and ran back toward the house where the warmth and light beckoned. I burst through the door, slamming it shut behind me, panting heavily. My daughter rushed toward me, wide-eyed with fear. "What happened? What did you see?" I looked back at the door, the fog still swarming outside like a hungry beast. I don't know. I shouldn't have gone out there. There's something in the fog." The atmosphere in our home grew thick with dread. Sleep didn't come easy that night. As exhaustion finally pulled me under, I was thrust into a nightmare deeper than before. Trapped within swirling shadows, the voices closing in on me, begging for release. From that day forward, we knew we could never take that route again. There was an unshakable feeling that whatever we faced in the fog that night was waiting, biding its time, lying in wait for unsuspecting travelers. The memories haunted us, seeping into every corner of our lives as every foggy evening became a reminder of that chilling night in the unknown. We would never forget the feeling of being watched, the echo of our screams lost in a swirl of icy vapor. In a desperate attempt to shield ourselves from its return, we decided to stop our business and move elsewhere. However, no distance could ever erase the remnants of that terrifying evening. Even after relocation, when the fog rolled in, we would brace ourselves, knowing it had the power to manifest our greatest fears. Somewhere in that mist, echoes of the past lingered, watching, waiting for the next lost soul to follow its call.